Hello, Culture Matters podcast. Today, I'm excited about our show. Before I introduce our guest, here is a quote. When a government betrays the people by amassing too much power and becoming tyrannical, the people have no choice but to exercise their original right to self-defense to fight the government. Alexander Hamilton.
Can you say it again?
When a government betrays the people by amassing too much power and becoming tyrannical, the people have no choice but to exercise their original right to self-defense to fight the government. Alexander Hamilton.
Do you have that right on your phone right there?
Yes, sir.
Could you just text it right over to me? Because that's a lot for me to write down super fast. And you know that you were speaking super fast, but
our guest today is unaware that yesterday morning at 5:30 a.m. before my podcast with Vinny Candelore, my phone broke and I have no one's number. But hopefully by 10 a.m. I will have everyone's number, including our guest, who's a very special person to the podcast, a steward of culture, a writer of notes, someone that listens to understand and hear the unsaid, someone that reads to think, writes to develop, speaks to let go, and someone I can think through this quote with you today, along with what we've learned this year from values, going through values of the company. Our guest today founded Guardian Roofing and Siding, along with the founder of a family. And now I'm trying to figure out how I can get you this quote without saying
okay.
Okay.
I got the concept. I just like to pull out some of the words. It's okay. No need to.
It's very painful, by the way, to live without any context, even for 24 hours. It feels like my culture has been taken from me. Maybe there's something there for us to unpack.
I'm sure there is. Even if there's not, we could make something.
Yeah, and imagine the government betrayed the people and amassed too much power, and I had no contacts to be able to self-defend. But so what stuck out? It seemed like you were really drawn to this quote.
Well, generally, any quote that you start off in the beginning, I like to write it down, and then from that point, understand it and maybe ask some questions. So I would say the simple answer to what stuck out is I was at Bible study last night, and we were, just talking a little bit in the beginning, and one of the gentlemen, he has a master's in divinity, which means like he's got his master's degree in Bible study. And he's a studied man, he's educated, and he was talking about, he went on a vacation and he read this book by George. He said it's a small book, 150 pages. Took him a couple days while he was on vacation, through vacation, to read a book called, and I want to say Animal Farm by George Orwell. And he basically gave us within 5 minutes a dissertation of the whole book, that the owner would come back drunk every night, forget to feed the animals, not take care of them. And the animals revolted, I guess, and chased the owner off and then took over. And then I guess the pigs were represented as a very the smartest of them, and took this real for the people attitude. Like, we have to organize, we have to learn how to use these machines. And then they were able to organize and get things together. And ultimately, the end result was that the pigs end up moving into the house, the farmer's house, wearing the farmer's clothes. And this part of the farm that they were supposed to make for like older animals to take care of them, they nixed that and started planting barley. And basically the cows or whoever was saying like, man, last night there was a lot of commotion in the house, dancing and then fighting, and they're getting rid of it. So basically the pigs had taken over, then they wanted to oust the, I don't know if I filled in that gap, but they wanted to oust the pig, right? And talking about how just this concept of tyrannical takeover and less for the people and more for those that are in power. So not only coincidental, okay, you bring the topic up here. That's from a human standpoint, you have this, and I think he said this was about the French Revolution, but regardless, it's about human nature and this Animal House thing and the parody. And then I look at it from a concept because of our work, because of some level of awareness, like, okay, this is business too, right? This is me. And am I going to come home every day and do the backstroke in the pool and then text people like, where are you? What are you doing? Why didn't you do this? Right? Like, how do you navigate, right, in these paradigms between, as well as so how do you navigate from leadership and staff, right? There's a real reality there, and relationship, as well as lead the company and each person take each role. And then my personality shifts from fear-based, insecurity, desire not to lose what I've built. So I have to, I have to, that's one side of it, towards the other side of like bully mentality. You guys suck. Nobody's doing anything. These are both God bless you, two ridiculous narratives. And to be able to find some level of what I would use the word of balance, right? To understand how to lead, who's responsible for what part, how do we communicate that clearly? How do we set the expectations and then make a proactive plan to move through it when I could go either way in a split second, and it starts with a thought, right? One thought can send me down a rabbit trail or one external thing. So I need to be very focused, clear, vision oriented, and let's lay on top of it, hiring new management, new employees, buying trucks, trying to go into a growth model and partner that with like, oh, we haven't had a major storm yet. Right. Like, so then there's fear, like, oh, apprehension. Did I make the right choice? So all that being said, to keep reminding or getting back to center and having clear understanding of the resources that we have in the company, the relationships and the reasons of why we do stuff to move forward, and coupling that. And this is, I would say, like the pinnacle of this discussion. And I think that it would apply to Alexander's quote and the French Revolution thing, is that without an semblance or some sort of faith, relationship, higher power, I would be spread out all over the place. And even with that, I believe that I have a strong relationship, strong faith. It's still a moment by moment practice to live it out in the present. Because even in the morning, I could wake up like, oh, I want to do this. I want this thing. I want to get this done. I want to do these things. And I could spread myself all over the place out of this, and not even recognizing that one thing might have to do with the other, right? Like my desire for growth and sales, maybe subconsciously motivating me to do something. Now, that relationship with God is like going to be centering me. Like, I'm not in fear of, okay, if we don't have an amazing year, but we have a building year, great, right? Like, I can be grateful for like food in my belly, roof over my head, and everything else is a bonus. So not to say that I'm not because that can trigger me to go into a way of like, let me lay back, let me kick back and see what happens. Well, then that's a poor exercise of faith to navigate these things. So, but I don't want to miss this other thing to answer your question of what stuck out to me, because faith is super important, but also the other unsaid part of this, and it may just be the way that I view the statement, is that there's two views. There's many views, but we're just talking about two where the people have no choice but to exercise their original right. I don't know if that was the exact words, to combat, right? To take back the power. Well, without clear communication, expectations, the reasons shared, the tyrannical leadership may not be tyrannical at all. It may just be perceived that way. And the tyrannical leadership may be like running around, let's say, with like a chicken with their head cut off. And I have a lot of compassion for the tyrants, I think, because as being in leadership, it's like, man, I've made so many mistakes. My intent was so far off from what the impact was from people around me that I was unaware of it. So the challenge is, without conflict, the verbal, the word, right? Without the word and the actions and the understanding, and that conflict is great because then the people get heard and the leaders can lead well and consider, but not, there's so many different perspectives of things that, and this is a direct like quote from you. If I don't lead the leaders well and teach them how to then have communication with the people that they're responsible to and for in working together, that then there's no chance for growth, because of the fact that the next level of leadership can't lead, and then it will break. And through that, then it goes into another statement of you. I say, quote, it's how I interpret what you've said. So you may not have even said it exactly this way. But then from that point, that is how a company will grow or fail, by breaking, by pushing itself to the limits of where it is, and then it breaks. And the way in with which it deals with the break is going to either level it to the next growth level, or it's going to rescind or fail and separate due to conflict and issues and no resources, or the areas of that. So the statement, as well as the fact that it's, interesting as we go into this another election year, and the last president was just found guilty, right? First time ever, they're saying on the news. And even this thing that you talk about with, so all these are great topics. Even this thing that you talk about with losing your context is different. That's nothing, right? We are given the opportunity to communicate with each other, and not only are we just given it, I believe that it's very much so filtered and manipulated through what we get, see, and hear. Through a text message, that's one thing, right? But I'm talking about social media. Like you say, what if the government was to take away this, this tool that we have? Well, that's basically one of the biggest arguments from the 2016 thing into through the years of social media and navigating those things. So again, that's another thing where faith for me is going to come into play. And that's a real thing. Like, it doesn't take much to shut down those things. How will we live? How will we communicate? Who will we be? Anyway, good morning, Jay. Thank you for the introduction. Thanks for the quote. You did sound a little tired with your, I'm so excited to be here, compared to other days. But thank you for the introduction.
I want to read it again in the company context. When a company betrays the employees by amassing too much power and becoming tyrannical, the employees have no choice but to exercise their original right to meaning, to fight the company.
And I think you could even hit tyrannical with amasses too much power, or like replace it with and becomes too, not the right word, but culturally corporate or process centered, or less relational and more about what's the word that we talk about, and you say accountability, right? Like this concept where it's all like, oh, you have to do this, have to do these things, where they're exercising that power through the rules, so to speak, but the leadership is not from, at least from the people, the employee's view, are not living up to that same requirement.
but afraid to say that, or and afraid, and likely afraid, fearful to say what they feel and think, and
Employee
likely
or
unasked. The people,
employee or leadership, or both,
the
really?
people. Yeah, the people likely afraid because their whole life is on the line. They might get kicked off the farm. Then what?
Faith. Well, that's the whole thing of the faith part for me. Now, other people may put something else in that place of like confidence or self-confidence, or trusting in themselves, that no matter what, even if they get off the farm, they will go start another farm, or they will find another farm. They see their own value, right? I think it's an insecure view of things. And I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to make an overarching statement that everybody's insecure or everybody's not. I think there's different levels, yeah.
Well,
So
that's where I could say faith could give somebody the courage to die on their cross. Like if I really live the values that you believe, I might actually speak up. Like my faith might actually give me the wind behind my back to speak my mind and to be fired or be penalized and
well,
be okay with that.
yeah,
Be
let's
able to
put that
burden.
into a business context. So that in the business context, they would speak up for the business values. They would speak up for those things, even at the cost of being ousted by what they might perceive as poor leadership or poor, I don't know the word, but when people are on the same level as them, they're co-employee, salespeople, or co-installers, or whatever they are. So they would be fearful to speak up because they don't want to cause a rift. They don't want people to not to like them. Well, that's, I feel like I've been maybe watching too much Jordan Peterson, because that's the end result of, just omitting these truths and creating this. He calls it hell. I would not go as far to say it that way, but creating crap, right? Your self-induced prison, even it's a self-centered mindset of control through not wanting to be honest and truthful and omitting.
This is where management makes it easier if they're capable of burdening feedback. They make it easier by asking, by not retaliating when there's feedback. When all of a sudden people aren't disappearing from the company because of the reviews, the anonymous reviews. Oh, we think it's this, that must have been that person that said that. Why were the reviews anonymous in the first place? We can't have an open, honest conversation. If I wanted to install a very quick, get rich quick vertical for CM, it would just be anonymous reviews. Who wouldn't want an anonymous review service listening? Well, how about this? How about the less, how about the less easy route? We just have a company where we could talk to each other. That has to start with the top.
Let me say that. So even when you talk about like an extreme negative, and not that it's not, that's that it's not occurring a lot in the world, but you talk about this extreme negative where like the criticism, the comment, the discussion is responded to poorly from leadership, or received poorly, right? So then it doesn't create a culture where somebody can come in and offer suggestion. Well, that's one thing. But the other part that I've learned, and this goes really into our topic of what we were going to talk about today, is if leadership doesn't make an opportunity for these things through meeting, right? Intentional meetings, whether that's an individual meeting, whether that's a group meeting, a weekly, quarterly, monthly. If they don't, like you said, ask the question, and that question can be done through multiple mediums. It could be a text message, it could be a group email, it could be leaving the opportunity for some, even in a normal conversation, right? Like it really goes back to paying attention to your intuition. If somebody is seemingly uncomfortable about something, ask them more. What is it? Do you have any ideas, any concepts? And not everybody does have that. They're just not liking something or whatever it is. So I say that because I really do. It's a learned lesson on my end with the values that we've been talking about through all of these podcasts. And now that we've started having weekly meetings, and then we start talking about the values, and even outside of those meetings started to talk about the values. And the last few weeks we've been, at the end of the meeting saying like, all right, who knows one of these values, right? Like who has one memorized, and then how did you use it this week? How do you use it generally? What is the opposite? What if you didn't do it? What would it look like? How would that be impactful? And creating the time to talk about these values actually then makes them more aware in the medium of the group of people, the culture, and then we can come to agreements on it. Whether somebody decides to talk through it or answer the question or be involved, they're definitely listening and hearing it, so it's making an impact. And for those that are having the discourse of the question and answer part of it, we're unearthing it together. So that, going back to even the original part of this discussion, like what do we learn through this stuff? Like that's like the crux of it.
I want to read this quote again in the context of the business. When a company betrays the employees by amassing too much power and becoming tyrannical, the employees have no choice but to exercise their original right to meaning, to fight the company. Now, the reason I replaced self-defense with meaning is that work is going to be meaningful if we know what we're doing, we're figuring out how to do it together, we know why we're doing it, and we're doing it. We're doing it together. We know what we're doing, so each individual can rise to their potential as individuals. Together, we can figure out how to solve problems, which we all have limitations to our potential and blind spots to ourself. So we do things together in teams. Relationships are formed, bonds are formed. The pursuit becomes meaningful. We have our individual pursuit, we have our collective pursuit. We know why we're doing it. We know why we're doing what we're doing. We also know why the company is doing what it's doing. We've had guidance from the people that are leading us from afar, higher up the organization. But based on how those people work and how they relate to us, we may just have a higher respect for ourselves, our potential. Like the more respectful they are to us, the more we believe in them based on their sacrifice, how they interact with us. We might start believing in ourselves. We might start believing in who we could be. Things might get easier at home. We might be better children, parents, siblings. We might be more productive citizens of the community. We may pay taxes. We might clean our road. We might volunteer to be a firefighter. But in the absence of meaning, We might beat our spouse. We might abandon our child. We might go to vice. We might self-destruct. We may end up in prison because every day we went to work, we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know how to play well with others. We didn't know why we were doing. We weren't working. We didn't respect our leaders. We resented them. We had contempt for our peers. We fought with them. We cursed at them. We smited them. We turned to drugs, alcohol, vice. We end up in prison. And all we live in is shame and guilt and betrayed by the culture. Like, it's no joke, this work thing. It's no joke. It's a huge part of our life. And it could easily become our life. In the absence of awareness, in the absence of meaning, because it's hard to see all parts of our life when we're not listening, not intentional, not paying attention, siloed on our own little island. And that's the other side of the coin of the high producing people who are shut off and shut down and self-centered and missing the forest for the trees, missing the whole picture. So this is hopefully a continual conversation that we'll be having over time. We talk about values that will.
I really have something.
I would, yeah. What can you?
In regards to that
out
continued
here
conversation, because I don't know if you saw my mic drop with my pen, and I was like, oh my gosh, as I'm writing the notes down, I'm like, okay, they need to know why. Everybody needs to know why, meaning, right? And I agree with all of that. And we've talked through, and we've been really dug in on the 8 values of Guardian, inside and forward and backwards, literally, inverse, and so, well, now it's time for me. I have a responsibility as the leader to understand clearly, make any changes if necessary, and deliver and start to communicate. And through this, what has been so great for me through the podcast experience with you, to going through this, is externalizing it, clearing it up, saying it, understanding it, bringing it into my normal discussions. There's been so much impact in that regard, but now it's time to move on to mission, vision, purpose, right? That's literally now that's where I have to go and lay that out clearly, and have discourse, and make sure that I'm clear on it, understand it, have it memorized, live it, and talk about it regularly. Because that is, even as you say, like, what's the reason why? Like, I know why we do what we do. I would say number one, I could tell this is something, because in so much I could feel myself saying, nope, don't say that, don't say that. And the thing of don't say that is, like, we want to provide for ourselves and our families by making money, right? Like, that is why I get up and go to work. Now, there is intrinsic values, there's other values, there's all this other stuff, but at the end of the day, if I still would do something to help people, but the reason that I go to Guardian is that I find value there. I provide meaning. God has given me a set of skills to be able to impact and help people and myself at the same time. So it goes back to the values of everyone's unique and serving to their needs and creating win-win relationships. But, that's one of the reasons why, is to create resources. So, and I want to put that separately and say, oh, our mission is first. Now, I think these things are held together in tension of providing for ourselves and providing for others. The only way we provide for ourselves is by providing for others. So what came first, the chicken or the egg? My brain wants to say, put the customer first, put the customer, talk about what we're doing for them. But so then in alignment with that, or held together in tension with that, is I believe that we have a highly moral, honest, experienced company that can help clients through very, very particular scenarios with this insurance stuff and the roofing and these projects that go on. That's real rough language, right? Like, but I think that I think the probability that a client would have a lesser experience if they went with somebody else is very high. And I'm not saying that there's not other companies that are better than us. I really, I don't know that for sure. They might have little areas, and I strive to then be better in those areas. But I do believe the majority of the companies out there that do what we do are not providing the same level that we are. So I have this like inside mission, vision, like we have to go out there and help. We have to be proactive to help, because if not, many people are going to get harmed. So that's like this driving force. And the reason why I paused so much in the beginning, like, oh, is it the money or is it the thing? Like, because culture and, well, my understanding of business, and it's always about putting it out like, oh, this is for the company, this is for the customer, like, but I'm also about being authentic and true. Like, yeah, we need to make money, right? We want to make resources, and this is the tool in which we're doing it, is roofing and siding. So the point that I wanted to say is that it's definitely revealing that, okay, time to move on to mission, vision, purpose, all these next ones that I don't even have them, clearly memorized. So let alone, am speaking with others about. So yeah, and I agree with all the statements above. The meaning of what we do, and it's so easy to fall out of when I focus on the details, the minute details, as in my role as a leader or whatever else. Like, oh, we had to do this. I could focus on that and remove or not be focused on the mission, the vision, the purpose. And I believe that, yes, there's a time and reasonable to lay out plans, details, and focus and be responsible to those things. But it all needs to go through the grid of what's our mission, vision, purpose. Like, if what's going on, where are we at? Let's move solving that problem through this thing. The values are great, and I'm not undervaluing the values, because that helps in the individualized. How do you act? How do you do? But without partnering that, I'm seeing right now that with the mission, vision, purpose, like, then it's like, okay, these are how we do. Like, what about the why? Why do we do these things? So it's a great, great revelation for me in this regard. Thanks.
Thank you all for listening to this episode of the Culture Matters podcast. Follow Robert. Leave us a review. Please share this to a friend who needs to hear it. We will see you next time in the Culture Matters podcast.